Well, welcome everybody. If you're in the right place, then you're here to learn more about our Coconino County Public Fiduciary Director, Rashida Suminski.
Yay.
I don't know a lot about Rashida, so we're going to dive into that today. But I have a couple of questions lined up, so I guess we'll just go from there. And Rashida, if you want to introduce yourself and let us know how long you've been at the county, and I don't know, anything else that is of interest to the group would be cool.
Sure. I'm Rashida Suminski, and I'm the Public Fiduciary Director. I'm also, what's interesting is the appointed Public Fiduciary for the county. It's not that I have two positions, but it's a separate side of what I do because all counties are required to have an appointed Public Fiduciary by the Board of Supervisors. So I've been at Coconino County for 5 years now. It will be 6 in May. Yay.
Yay.
I've very much enjoyed working for the county. Ever since I have come, I have felt like I joined a new family. I came from Mojave County, which I love just as much. It's just a different demographic. And I was there for 10 years. So after coming from there to here and living in mountain life and just the demographics of this county was such a stark contrast to the other county. It was exciting for me because it gave me an opportunity to grow within from a very rural county to a more metro rural county. I always call us a metro rural because we have a good mall and we have Bath and Body Works and
those important stores.
In and out's coming in. So but I have very much enjoyed building the department from what it was when I first started. I think we had like 2 staff members, no, 4 staff, but 2 were leaving. Not because of me, but they were just on their way out. And so Kim Musselman and I, worked to get the team to what it is. She helped get the base together. And then now we've kind of carried out to what it is today. And we're 13 strong. So I'm super proud of just everything that the team has done to get us to that, as they are the ones that made that happen. And to look at that over the past, 5 years, working for Coconino County has been very exciting for me. So I just continue to feel extremely blessed and honored to serve as the public fiduciary for our county. And it's, something that I think I'll always just feel honored because this is a position of trust. And a lot of people also don't know much about what we do. We're kind of a silent department, working in the background, but doing very good things and for a good cause. So, but that's kind of been my time at Coconino County.
Nice. So if you could give us some information about like how you grew up and kind of like your cultural background and how that has maybe influenced like your leadership style today.
Sure. Yeah. So I was born and raised in San Francisco, believe it or not. And I went to college at San Francisco State. And it was I majored in political science. It was a fantastic school. At that time, there was a lot of, let's just say, a lot of healthy debating going on and things of that nature when I went to that college. And between like political parties and people's thought process. And I would always say that if the wind blew, there would be a protest regardless, on 19th Avenue in San Francisco, and we were going there. So it was, a fantastic program to have really been enriched with a very broad spectrum of political views and acceptance and things of that nature. So I absolutely had a wonderful experience going there, and did a lot of programs having to do with urban planning, government type of programs that helped the community. I did an internship with the Urban Institute for San Francisco, which focused on affordable housing. And I did an internship for the city of Oakland with their community services program, and assisted with their annual, they did like an annual analysis on their CDBG funds. And so I got to assist with that, which was exciting. So I always knew I wanted to do something in public service. And both of my parents, neither one of them worked in public service. I came from a middle-class family. They both worked very hard. I am of mixed race. My mom is white and my father's African American. Culturally, though, my mom is Italian. And that's very exciting because I've done a lot of research on my Italian side, and I'm very interested in it because it goes very long back to where my grandmother, I'm sorry, not my grandmother, my great grandmother immigrated from Italy through Ellis Island, and we found the records, and the story about that was that her and her sister were brought over and married to two brothers, because back then arranged marriages were allowed, normal, I don't know. But at that time, that's they were brought over very young. So I've learned that whole story, and it's a really interesting story to me. But culturally, I have really I find it fascinating because it's so different from what the cultural side on my dad's side. He's from Pensacola, Florida, and my family on my dad's side are from the South, very Southern, great people, but it's just completely different. So it's very interesting to learn those two different stark contrasts with my nationality. So after I graduated from San Francisco State, I kind of worked in the corporate arena for a bit to try it out, because at the time that was the .com boom, and it was very enticing with everything they had to offer at that time. It was something that I quickly realized gave me no reward at the end of the day, because it was all about bottom line for the companies, and a lot of these companies were great. I worked for Intel for 4 years. They were fantastic. But again, at the end of the day, it's all about profit and loss for the company. So when I went into public service at Mojave County, I was so excited, and I started as a case administrator with the Public Fiduciary's office. And I very much enjoyed it because it was a niche part of life that I had never heard of. And everyone I had talked to hadn't heard of it. And then every time I told someone what I did, they had no idea what it was or that it even existed. So that's what I really liked a lot about what we were doing. And it was almost like we were, I always said, like the CPS of adults, because we become guardian and conservator of individuals who are deemed incapacitated by the court, and they become a ward of the county, just like a minor would become a ward of the state until they become of age. So, my journey through working at Mojave County brought me to the position that I'm in now. But what I like to always bring up is that I worked my way up from case administrator to then deputy public fiduciary, and then I was interim public fiduciary, and then I was public fiduciary, and then I fought to make the position a director position, and then became director. So it was 10 years of really progressively working very hard, but I have to say that the passion was there for me because I felt like I was making a huge difference in not the world, but just one aspect of life in one county in the world. And for me, that was super special. That there was a group of people that relied on us, and it was very important for me that we made sure that 100% they received the best of care, the best of everything that we could provide within the statutory confinements of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I think is important when you're doing the position of director level, because if the passion and the reward isn't there at the end of the day that you're seeking, it won't work. You won't be able to do the job, appropriately. And that's what fuels my fire for my position is what we do for our people in our county, for our community. Yeah.
Cool. That's really inspiring. You kind of answered a little bit of the questions I had before, which were what were some of your roles before coming to Coconino? But how did you end up? So was it straight from San Francisco to Mojave County? Is that how that happened?
No, I hung around San Francisco for a while and lived kind of in suburbs around San Francisco. And then when I worked so the very first, to me, real job, I always say that to myself, because of course I started working at 14 at McDonald's at the drive-through. That was my first job. So my first real job was working for Safeway, but in their corporate department. And I worked in their legal department as a legal administrative assistant. So that was my very first job. And I worked there for 2 years, and then the .com boom hit. And that's when I went and worked for Intel in the Sacramento area and worked with them for 4 years. That was a very exciting company to work for. And I was a business analyst at Intel. So when we were in Sacramento, throughout everything I've been telling you, I met my husband in college. And we got married throughout this time. And so my husband was from Arizona. That's the ties to Arizona and how I even got here. And specifically Lake Havasu City is where his family lived. So after, we had worked, and I was working for Intel after 4 years. Intel, like I said, was a fabulous job. I mean, I didn't even want to leave, but my husband really wanted to relocate to be closer to his family. He has a huge family, huge. And that's what brought us out here.
Mm-hmm.
So when we came out here, that's when I started looking at the government sector. Because I noticed that jobs were scarce out here. I thought, goodness, where do people work here? So coming from San Francisco to, or even Sacramento to out here. So I started looking at the government sector, and the position that I applied for was for, at the time, it was called a case administrator with Mojave County. And I had zero experience as a social worker or any type of case management or anything like that whatsoever. So they didn't hire me for that part. They hired me for the analytical part of the job and the financial side because of managing the funds, and they thought that they would teach me the social work side, which they did. And I can't thank enough to the people that were there for me throughout my time at Mojave County. I didn't do this all alone. You know, it takes people. You could do the best job in the world in your job, but it takes someone to notice you, someone to want to notice you as well. And, you know, I had a great supervisor who was priming me all along, and I didn't even know it, to be her successor. And, you know, it's something that you don't think about because if you don't prime someone as your successor, then you're leaving the department vulnerable. And if you truly care about your, you know, like your mission in your job, which that's what I see this as for me, you would make sure that that happens. And that's what kind of person she was. So I learned a lot from her. You had asked about, you know, previous supervisors and things that I'd had. I crafted a lot of my management style from her. She was a very, very hard line of sight supervisor. And I came from Intel, which was zero micromanagement. You worked independently. The work culture was so different. And so it was hard for me to work for her. But what I learned to do was I learned what she wanted, and I always tried to be like 10 steps ahead of her, because she could be so hard to work with and for, you know, to the point of upsetting people. But she knew that, and because I got 10 steps ahead of her, I really never experienced any negativity. So in learning her, though, there were also sides of her that were fabulous. She was incredibly smart. She could recite any statute, and she wasn't an attorney, just, you know, off the top of her head. And you think to yourself, wow, you know, that's just incredibly, to me, that would take 20 years to learn. But she would also always shoot from the hip with staff, and to the point where sometimes people would be afraid to ask for a question. So I would notice those things, just, you know, generally not, you know, it was never my goal to be a director or anything like that. So these are just things I picked up on through the years, and I always make sure not to do or to do, or things that she did do. But she was incredibly generous with family and life balance issues, things of that nature. If it had anything to do with your family, it was like drop everything and go. I mean, she was fabulous like that. So I learned a lot from her. All the knowledge that I have today in the job that I do, it all came from her, because she was definitely like a pillar in the community. And has always been my mentor and continues to be my mentor, even though she is retired to this day, because she did go on to be the Maricopa County Public Fiduciary, and I took her place. But I was made to compete still for my position. So even, you know, which I'm glad, because there's something about competing, because then you can always know to yourself that I wasn't just given the job. I had to interview against 6 other people who were just as qualified as me. So, you know, that's kind of some of the things that I've learned throughout, you know, my time. That I haven't had very many supervisors, because of the 10 years I spent was with, you know, pretty much her, until she left. And she left about maybe 3 years before I came to Coconino County. So, you know, my management style today is very much empowering my staff, not micromanaging, unless they need it in the beginning, but in a positive manner. It's not micromanaging when you're training. But the minute that they're able to step off, but the positions in my department, they actually have to be independent. You have to be able to work independently and think independently, because we're managing people's lives and things of that nature. So I love to empower my staff to afford them any type of recognition that's going to enhance their level of knowledge and certification. That's always important. In my department, I have 6 licensed fiduciaries at this time, and that is extremely hard to do, but important. And I'm proud of that because these women now have that level of certification in their roles, and they have that they can feel good about, because it takes them to another level of knowledge within the department. It's kind of a rite of passage every time someone passes. They're like, it's a very hard test. So, but yeah, that's just something that, I learned, like I said, from taking good and bad and then removed or added to my management style. And then you also have to take your management style and adapt it to your team, because management style isn't one size fits all. And so that's another thing I learned from my previous supervisor as well, is learn your staff and learn their strengths and you maximize on their strengths, not forcing them to do something that is not a strength, because everybody has different strengths on the team, and it always fits great when you maximize on everyone's strength, because then they're doing fantastic, and we're seeing the results on our end as well. So it's a juggling act, but it works out good. And I have an amazing team, and they're all very strong. And I think that again, just repeating what I said before, that I'm very lucky to have had the people that have recognized and noticed my hard work throughout my time at Mojave County, and even before that, because like I said, it does take, you could work as hard as you can and be the best at what you do, but if you don't have someone there to notice you, it doesn't always work out the way you want it to. It's just life, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we have some stuff in the chat. Melanie says, I think folks at the county in general try to work 5 steps ahead of the issue. Which I totally understand. And then she says, the amount of fiduciaries seems more than it used to be. That's awesome. I know those were tough positions to find. So Melanie used to work in HR, and I used to work in HR too. And so I remember that time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And then Melanie also says, I saw maximizing strengths in the HR all the time, and I can concur.
Yeah.
Maximizing strengths is a good way to really, I don't know, almost push yourself in some new directions that you've never thought that you could do before, or like you said, kind of being noticed about like, hey, you're really good at this. Like, are you sure this is what path you want to take, or is this something you're interested in? And so I think, especially like being women in the workplace, it's just, we can balance plates, like there's just a lot of things that happen all the time.
We can balance all day long. I mean, since the pandemic happened, I've done so much reflection. I'm sure we all have. And I think about, it hasn't been easy, being a mom. My son's 15 now. But he was only like 9 when I started at the county. He was still, little. It's literally happens quick, the time that it's like 6 months between them being little and all of a sudden this young man in your house, and you're like, oh my God. So, it is not, I'm not going to, sugarcoat and say, oh, it is so easy. I'm so strong. It's not. It takes, and that's why it's so important that you are passionate about what you do, because the amount of time you have to spend, working and then also trying to take care of your family as well. And teenage years are such a critical time, um, that, it's a balancing act. So, and we can do it, might not be able to do my makeups a lot of days, but, it's something that, um, I think in us, as women, it's just inherent in women in the workplace. It's inherent in us that we get it all done. There's no other option. Like, I mean, it's, we take care of our family, and, we make sure and do 125, 150% at work. That's the way, that's the mentality I pretty much carry. I'm not going to say I cook dinner every night though. We do eat dinner, but I might not have cooked it. So, that's okay. But yes, I agree, Melanie. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot, and then sometimes we do need mental health care. It's very important, and some people are afraid to talk about that. And I'm not, I think it's very important, um, for us as women in the workforce, because we have to do so much more. Um, at least I feel like that. Because we take care of everything. You have to make sure to carve out that time for self-care, mental health care, and just even woman care, going and, to the salon, or, I mean, I don't know when the last time was that I had a manicure or anything like that. Things like that that are relaxing. And then mental health care, going talking to someone. When you just feel like, and I know we've all had those days where we know we've got it all under control, but you stop for a second, you're just like, you think for yourself, just for a second, I would just love to just run away for, a week and have nothing to do and no responsibilities or anything. But we can't. That just can never happen. And it's just one of those things that I think that's when you need that mental health check-in, and someone to talk to. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think it's important, and especially in today's um, uh, climate, we should definitely be able to have that. And after going through the pandemic and everything we've been through in the last 3 years, I think we're all healing, whether we, admit it or not. Like, I see some people and I think to myself, at work, I'm like, gosh, they seem so put together and just unaffected, by all this. And I try to appear that way. But inside, I'm quite affected by what just happened the past, 3 years. And I've got to go through so much with my team, and everything they've gone through, from family issues to people losing their parents, um, uh, not necessarily from COVID, but just, I think I have a group, a generational group that has lost their parents, this past year. It was just that timing, and you go through it with them. So that way, that can weigh on you without you even knowing it, because you care so much about your staff and their well-being. Um, so it's a lot, and it's okay to sometimes say, I need to reset. And you can reset a million times. I always tell myself, you just keep going. You just never stop, but I think that's something that we all need to work on, is resetting, and making sure that we're gentle with ourselves and each other. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good one, Melanie.
I agree. Because I really need to listen to that because I don't. Because I'll sit here and I might be talking a good talk, but if you ask any one of my staffs, they'll be like, we have asked her to go have a pedicure with us like 10 times and she just said no.
That's funny.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks for bringing up the mental health stuff because it is a big deal and it's
Yeah.
hard to do. It's hard to say when, we need a life, just some support, and I think, like you said, going through COVID, like everyone is kind of still figuring out what works and what doesn't. And not only that, like there's people that work remote and don't work remote or do a hybrid. And so what's that look like? And
Right.
like, I don't have kids yet, but if I had a kid, that would totally change everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know how moms do it sometimes. And Melanie knows, I would tell her that all the time.
Well, and I think too, I see, I've been here long enough to see that even as folks go up into managerial and leadership positions, they don't give themselves the permission to do those types of things anymore. Because the work gets to be so busy and chaotic. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point, Melanie, because I don't, because you almost feel guilty. And you're absolutely right. I don't know why. I
yeah,
don't know
we are
why.
the best at making ourselves feel guilty.
Yeah. And if anybody deserves it, we do.
Right?
Yeah.
Definitely. And that was part of one of my next questions was how do you keep a work-life balance while being a full-time director and mother? But you kind of hit on that a little bit about what you like to do and how that works for you. But I don't know. Do you have any advice for someone who one day would like to be a director or something like that? Like, what would be some advice for that kind of person that is maybe in the middle right now, but wants to get up to that kind of level and kind of, I guess, maybe some things to expect or just from your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's most important is that your work stands out. So you could stand out as a person, all day long. There's so many great people. Everybody, that I work with is fantastic. But my recommendation is, and I think where I got noticed is my work. Because I think, like I said before, that was not my intention was to climb the ladder. It was not at all when I became a case administrator for Mojave County. Even at 4 years when I was named deputy, I was not vying for that position. I was not at all. She chose me and named me. And I, realized, like I said, how I had started to work and always, tried to be like 10 steps ahead of her. So I didn't get the snarky comments if I, asked a question that wasn't up to par or because with her it was all about knowledge that if you didn't ask the right question or ask it the right way, then you do not know what you're doing or talking about, and that I guess deserved a snarky comment. I don't know, but while working, your way up, if that is what you want, have your work stand out. Learn what you're, and again, this is my, just my advice. Learn what your supervisor likes and doesn't like. Learn how they want it done. Because at the end of the day, especially in a position like this, when it's an appointed position, they're not doing things necessarily because they want it done a certain way. They're doing it because it's based on statute. So there's very little room for creativity. Of course, there's creativity in how we do it, maybe. And then even in that, not so much because we have to be so transparent. But, with my work, I think standing out to her, she just started giving me more duties out of nowhere. And I just rolled with it. And I liked getting the additional duties. And I absolutely loved my job. Absolutely loved it. And felt it was my mission, that this is what I was supposed to do, is, work to help protect this vulnerable group of citizens that were in Mojave County at the time. When I became deputy, I just took on the role. I did everything that I knew needed to be done and worked probably, 150% harder, because I felt so honored to have been given that role. And again, all throughout my journey, every step of the way, I just felt honored every step of the way for being given the opportunity. And I think there's something to say about being humble. And maybe that had something to do with it too. I don't know. Sometimes the quiet ones get noticed. I don't know. I wasn't one that was always like, this is my plan. In 5 years, I want to be director. And this year, I want to be this. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's great to have a plan. I just wasn't one of those people. And so, in adding to that, I think too, on top of working, hard and having your work stand out, you have to love what you do, because the higher you go, the harder it gets. And sometimes there's this myth that the higher you go, the easier it gets and the less work you have. There's an incredible amount of accountability and pressure when you are at director level, because you're responsible for an entire division, and that's huge. And in my particular position, it's even more. There's even more pressure, because there's 155 people we are responsible for their lives, and so that turns it into a situation that makes it becomes very personal, for me, and everybody on my team. So, again, my biggest advice is that, number one, make your work stand out more than anything. That's what's, I notice always is the work product. And also that you have to absolutely love what you're doing. Love it. I mean, love it, especially if you have kids. Because if you're juggling all that and you don't love what you do, because you work 24/7 as a director as well. You're on call, and you've got to want to be there, and that's just something that, for me, I've loved my job. I love what I do, and coming to Coconino County, all that did for me was change the trajectory of my knowledge, and which was great, because it sent me in a new direction, but doing the same thing, and enhanced my knowledge of handling cases that were completely different than the types of cases from Mojave County. So, that's my biggest advice, really. And just to know that, really understand that the higher you go, the harder it gets. It really does. And you have to be ready to dedicate a certain amount, of your life for that. The county is very big on work-life balance, huge. And I love that about this county. But at the same time, you always set a personal dedication for yourself with your team and your team's needs and the community's needs. And so, while there's work-life balance, that work-life balance is kind of left up to you. So you have to force yourself to manage that. And most of the time I just fall into the swing of, I take vacation at Christmas and that's about it. I mean, and it's not that I don't have enough time. It's just, I always feel like now wouldn't be a good time for me to go on vacation. Like, I'll look at my calendar and be like, yeah, no, it's not a good time. It's like, it's never a good time. You just go, but I'm always yelling at my staff, you need to go on vacation. Somebody's going on vacation every other week because you guys need to take time, and because they'll they'll try and do that too. So again, I'm the worst person to not take my own advice, but that's another thing too, is taking time off. And I'm horrible at that. Horrible, because like I said, it just always seems like it's not a good time, something might happen. And and not that I'm a micromanager, because during the last year I've been working with several staff to work, to be acting public fiduciary. Well, so I can be out. And because in this job, it takes 2 years minimal just to even get up to speed. So now that I've had several staff with me for 5 years, they are at expert level and can now do that. So now I'm turning the reins over and allowing them to do that, which they absolutely embrace. And I, had the opportunity to do that this last year. But what I did was it was nice because on Christmas, I took 2 weeks and I didn't get a phone call because I had an acting public fiduciary. So that for the first time. So that's, that was great, but I need to use that regularly. But it also then opens up opportunities for staff. I also keep that in my head to get that experience. And then also, kind of be, start going up the ladder in that regard for leadership. So all of that, is important to do, not just for yourself, but it also impacts the staff because it's positive for them too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, at HR, we have like almost like doubles of different people. So that way you can leave, and if something happens, there's someone that does know how to handle it, kind of thing.
Yes.
And that's always that, I think that gives that flexibility to people for it. It's okay to take time off if you need the time off. Like,
Yeah.
Like you said, like going out for the 2 weeks and not getting a phone call is like golden.
It was. It was so nice.
Yeah. But Melanie
Yeah.
says that.
Oh, yeah. And we have backups to like the case administrators. And they're the ones that work the most because they're salaried, whereas the folks on the administration team are hourly. So they work 8 to 5. They don't but the case administrators, they work a lot of hours, and they're also on call because we have to be on call 24/7 in case something happens to the client after hours. We have an on-call system and everything. So, but they will always go on vacation and try and manage it where they offset it with each other, and they're really good about trying to use it, because I tell them all the time, I'm like, you've got to take the breaks, and it's just so important to do that. So that's just something that really pushes, and I always tell them, I'm not trying to tell you you have to, I'm just saying, please, make sure and get some time off or flex time because you worked 70 hours last week, or but they're also the same. They'll be like, it's not a good time. And I'm like, no, it is for you, because you have a backup. And each case administrator they each have a backup. So when they're out, the other case manager is supposed to, or case administrator is supposed to manage their caseload, which is great. So they don't come back to, work, a bunch of work that's piled up. But they'll still, be like, it's still not a good time because I don't want to leave that I don't want to put that on the other case administrator because, they're so great with each other. They're like, I don't want to go on vacation and leave her with that. She'll be like, oh my God, this case is, it's so hard. And, so they're really good with that, but with each other. But at the same time, then they end up not going on vacation. So I have to constantly remind them. So maybe I need to start doing it more. So they go like, well, Rashida's starting to go more.
Yeah, leading by example is always nice sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I don't really know. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for Rashida, possibly? we can put it in the chat, or if you want to just get on and say a couple of things. That might be nice. Melanie's been interacting. Right
I'm
there.
sorry I was late. And then I was crunching accidentally because I was starving.
Oh, no worries.
So, but it's so good to hear your perspective, and I really admire the way that I remember when we interviewed you, I was there for your interview, and you talked about that you've done every role and you understand every role in the structure here and where you were before, and that it helps you to really understand the challenges that each role faces and how everyone works together and see the big picture. So that you can really focus on clients. And I so remember that you really talking about the people, the focus on the clients, the focus on the teamwork. It really stuck with me. So thanks
Wow,
for
I
that.
can't believe you remembered that. I even remember that, but I can't believe you do.
I remember. I was like, oh, we better hire her. I'm gonna die.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Erica.
Yeah, I think I said on both of your interviews. I was on like the phone interview and the in-person.
Yes, you were.
Yeah.
And I remember you because you were the only one always smiling. And I think I told you that. It's like you'd look around the room, and because I hadn't interviewed in 10 years after, and I thought, wow, is this how they do interviews now? That's panels. I'm like, so, the first panel you were in, but that one was a big panel.
Right.
And then the second panel with you were in, and I just remember because when I talk, I look around the room and I kept coming back to you, and you had the most warm smile. And if you hadn't been there, I don't know if I would have felt as anchored.
I was like, you're doing great. We're gonna hire you. Keep talking.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I think it was in the county manager's office. It was me.
It was. It actually was.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it was with Cynthia.
With Cynthia.
And Mike.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Neil. Yes.
Oh, I didn't remember that Neil was there.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and I think too that one of the ways that you inspire me is you're such a good mom. Like I like to talk to you about mom stuff because you're such a good mom, and you're funny. I mean, you're like, this is going on with my child. And I'm stressed out about it. And
Oh God, yeah. No, that's me.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, you take care of so many people, and it's good to know that like you have that balance.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I see Melanie popped up.
I'm here. I'm trying to work and listen.
Okay.
But I like what you said about when you go up, because that's how I started. I started as an admin position. I'm gradually, eventually going to take over the county. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's kind of like when, like you want to make people at least do a serving job for a certain position, for a certain amount of time in their life, so they know how to treat people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Mary.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to tell Rashida, I always enjoy your presentations. And I've enjoyed working with you for a lot of years, us working at the county attorney's office, and I can really see your leadership style. I really like that you do give a lot of leeway to your staff so that they can develop on their own. And I think that encourages them, but also gives them great leadership skills as well. So thank you for all that you do. I know you do a wonderful job in your position, and I think that the type of work that you do is so difficult, but I like your passion for that, and the county's very lucky to have you in that position.
Oh, thank you, Mary. I so miss working with you, Mary. And when Yvonne View represented the Public Fiduciary's office, it was me, Yvonne, and Mary, and when we would have our legal review meetings, we would whoop it up so much in the conference room over at the county attorney's office that they would come knock on the door and tell us, it was mostly me, I will admit. Oh, I miss those days, Mary. That was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun, but you do a great job, and it's a difficult job to do, and you do it with ease and or looking like it's very easy, and your staff does a wonderful job as well.
Oh, thank you so much. You don't know how much that means to me, and I'm going to pass that on to them. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for presenting today, Rashida. I learned a lot more about you and what your office kind of does and your style of leadership. And I don't know, it's a nice reminder to have that, you know, other departments have different directors that do things in different ways, but at the same time, like, care in the same way, deeply about what their department does, because as you said, like, if you don't have your passion for it, then it's hard to do the job, but you seem to really have a passion for this. And I don't know, it's inspiring and really nice to hear, especially during Women's History Month, because we're all women in the workplace, and like, how cool is that, you know? Like, it's just awesome.
Agree.
Yeah, and we do. We can help each other out. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's so important too, is noticing other women, like I had said before, that, you know, you can work as hard as you can, and it's about getting noticed a lot of times. And I'm constantly doing that. And, you know, more than one person can get noticed because everybody has a strength. And with my staff, everybody has an incredible strength, but they're all different. So we maximize that and make them the expert of their strength and have them, you know, work in that, work more in that area of their expertise, and have the other folks work, you know, it works out because then they're an expert in the other areas. And so I really try and hone in on that, or look at the staff that have potential to be expertise in that area, who are good at it, but just haven't mastered the knowledge yet. And I didn't do that at Mojave County because I went from peer to supervisor, and it's hard and different when you do that. I'm sure if anybody that's done that knows that. So when coming here and starting fresh, it was really, really interesting and exciting to do that, because I saw how well it worked and how happy it made staff, because they're working on what they're good at. So it makes them feel accomplished, and you know, they feel that praise and that ownership of what they're doing too. Ownership of what you do is important at work as well, to know that I own this is mine, I'm, you know, responsible for it, you know, I made it great, or not, you know, or, you know, whatever, owning it. Because also owning your mistakes is important too. And I know that I have really taught my staff that own your mistakes. We all make mistakes. I completely own up when I make a mistake, like I almost over own it, because I want them to know, you know, nobody's perfect. People are fallible. You know, it's when you don't learn from your mistakes. But because sometimes, you know, my staff get too, you know, you want your staff to be loyal, but you don't want them to be loyal to a point where they fall apart because they make a mistake. Because they don't want you to be disappointed in them. That you also have to watch that as well. I mean, because it can go the other way, that you are that supervisor that lets them be empowered, but then when they do make a mistake, they're so hard on themselves that it can cause a negative, you know, reaction. So you really have to make sure and tell them, okay, calm down. If I'm not mad or upset, I don't know why you are. So, you know, there's a balance on both ends, and it's been, you know, interesting to watch and and to also watch, I've had a staff member come to my office, to work in my office, who didn't have that much confidence. And to look at her today, I see a completely different staff member. And it warms my heart because I know it has to do with my management style, because she did not have an ounce of confidence when she came to our office. It was always like she wouldn't even give a recommendation or anything. And now it's complete opposite. And she's showing ownership, and I just love it because she loves her job. I can see it. She's like a different person. And to me, that's wonderful. So I feel like maybe I've made just a tiny, tiny difference in her life. Maybe.
I'm sure you have.
Definitely.
And I love that you can work so hard and have such fun at work, right? Like the work that you do is incredibly heavy. I mean, I don't think people realize how hard it is and how heavy it is. And it's really intense. And so for you to be able to have a great smile, to, you know, cause havoc in a conference room, have a reputation for causing havoc in a conference room, you know, that's what helps your staff too, for them to know, like, we take the work we do really seriously, but we can enjoy each other. And not work in a really heavy place. So that, because when you come to work in a heavy place, it makes it hard to come to work each day. And so
it does.
How do we have fun at work? How do we rely upon each other at work and still take our work really seriously and do the really difficult stuff?
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. And there's a fine balance with that, you know. And that's what's great about my staff, is they get my sense of humor. And it's funny because I'll tell them, I'll say, if you don't have a sense of humor, it makes me uncomfortable, you know. So, you know, they know my sense of humor, but it's almost like we're in tune with each other, because you know, we could be totally laughing and then boom, we're on a meeting. It's like we're different people, you know. It's like complete professionalism, and boom, and our knowledge is kicked in. And, you know, so it's funny because then after the meeting, we're like, what the heck just happened there? You know, and it's so I think they appreciate the not so serious all the time, because even sometimes we'll be in a meeting and then we'll get off it, and I'll say, I don't know, but it was just too serious. I just couldn't take it. You know, nobody even cracked a joke or anything. So, you know, you have to be, I always tell people, I don't like people who are too serious all the time. We've got to at least crack a joke now and then. So they know that that's just how we roll. It's funny. So I always, they know I have a tendency to make fun of people that are way too serious all the time. I'm like, that person is way too serious about what they're doing. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks again, Rashida. We're at the 1 o'clock hour.
Okay.
I'm so happy that you're able to meet with us today and talk to us. And yeah.
Well, thank you for asking me again. It's always an honor when you guys ask me to come speak. You know, I just feel elated that you would even want to hear from me. So thank you.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, everybody have a good rest of the day. And this will be recorded and then put on the SharePoint. So I'll put it there today. And then if anyone has anything else to say, then we'll say that. But the chat looks good. Tomorrow is a lunch and learn with Sarah Benatar, so we'll get to learn more about her tomorrow. Same place, well, on Zoom at noon tomorrow. And then Friday is the last thing for Women's History Month. It's a lunch and learn on Maya Angelou. So look forward to seeing you ladies there, and have a good rest of the day.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Rashida.